good morning and welcome. I'm Bob Rogers, Executive Director of the Coastside Land Trust. I would like to welcome you to this edition of the Coastside Land Trust free community webinar series. The Coastside Land Trust is dedicated to the preservation, protection, and enhancement of the open space environment, including the natural, scenic, recreational, cultural, historical, and agricultural resources of Half Moon Bay and the San Mateo County coast for present and future generations. We are a nonprofit organization working hard since 1997 to safeguard our scenic bluffs, open space, stream corridors, and agricultural lands from the southern city limits of Half Moon Bay north through the community of Montera in San Mateo County. Taking a strategic approach to land conservation, we protect land by purchasing and accepting donations of land and conservation easements. We secure private and public funding for land conservation. We provide assistance and resources to landowners interested in protecting their land. And we lead conservation, restoration, stewardship, and educational activities. And every day we remain dedicated to protecting our coastline and our future. As members of our community and valued Coastside Land Trust supporters, we ask you to make choices that support our organization and our important work. This can be done by donating through our website. Other easy ways to donate are through planned giving of assets of land through wills and living trusts, vehicle donation, gifts of stock or tribute gifts, also showing up for work days and passing along the message and our mission. The important part here is that we all do our part in whatever way we can to help protect and steward our shared open spaces. Thank you for joining us here today. We have a special treat in store for you. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Kate Dickey, our social media coordinator, to introduce our presenters. Take it away, Kate.
Thanks, Bob. And thank you all for joining us here today for our free community webinar series. Our goal here is just to bring together a diversity of environmental perspectives to help us better understand the world and our role in caring for it, both locally and globally. Before we begin, just a couple of quick reminders. Please type your questions into the Q&A section. We'll have a formal Q&A session at the end. And we'll ask our two presenters all of those questions at the end, or as many as we can get to. Today, we are really excited to welcome Kellyx Nelson has served as the executive director of the RCD since 2006, leading with a fierce dedication to public service and collaboration. With 35 years of experience across nonprofits, governments, and the private sector, Kellyx brings an innovation and inclusive approach to tackling complex environmental challenges. Her leadership has earned the RCD numerous accolades, including the congressional recognition of their work to prevent extinction of the coho salmon and a Silicon Valley Water Conservation Award. She was also inducted into the San Mateo County Women's Hall of Fame in 2015 for her contributions to the community, and she received Bay Nature's 2024 Local Hero for Conservation Action. From environmental educator to land trust project manager and even a long haul truck driver at one point, Kellyx's career path reflects a remarkable blend of grit, vision, and heart. And then joining her today is Clifton Herrmann, a water quality specialist at the RCD, whose expertise in marine and watershed science guides effort to keep our creeks and beaches clean for people and wildlife alike. With a background in marine biology and a master's in applied marine and watershed science, Clifton's career spanned outdoor education, policy development, and consulting. His work centers on the intersection of science, community, and the environmental justice. In his time off, you'll find him enjoying the outdoors, experimenting in the kitchen, or spending time with his loyal dog. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Kellyx Nelson and Clifton Herrmann. You guys ready to get started?
Yeah, thank you for such a warm welcome. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining, and thanks, Clifton, for pulling that up. I'll just introduce us a little bit and then pass it over to Clifton. Today, of course, we're going to nerd out on water quality science, so buckle up, everybody. We're going to get your science on. We want to talk about just what we've learned at the RCD, Resource Conservation District, about water quality on the coasts. Of course, where we live, we're very closely related to the creeks, the beaches, and the ocean. And so that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. So Clifton, if you'll go ahead to that next slide, I will just explain a little bit about what the Resource Conservation District is for those who are less familiar. I like to say that we're the best form of local government that you've never heard of. So we're a special district in San Mateo County. We were formed by farmers in 1939. There's about 100 of these conservation districts across California. We were the first. And there's thousands more across the nation. We basically serve as boots on the ground to help people help the land, whether it's soil health or fire or wildfire or preventing extinction of species. We work across jurisdictions, across public and private lands to provide confidential, non-regulatory assistance for people to do voluntary conservation. Can I see that next slide there?
Yep.
Thanks. So what we do is we develop our priorities based on what we hear from the community and stakeholders. And these are based on these priorities. These are the focal areas that we work in. A lot of our work in some of our previous webinars have to do with improving the chances of survival of animals and plants that are threatened or endangered. We are working a lot on improving the health of forests and protecting communities from the risk of wildfire as it pertains to natural resource management. We provide a lot of assistance to help agricultural producers to empower them as the stewards of land that they are. We work to not only adapt to climate change, but mitigate climate change, reverse climate change by drawing greenhouse gases down from the atmosphere and storing them in soils and plants using nature-based solutions for climate change. And then today, what we're going to be talking with you about is in our focal area about water resources, specifically water quality, as we try to ensure clean and reliable water for farms, for wildlife, and for our human communities that share this resource. So our program specifically at the RCD having to do with water quality really falls into three categories. Trying to understand the sources of water quality, that is monitoring and studies and other ways that we identify sources, trying to reduce and eliminate the sources of pollution themselves, and also things like this, working with community members, trying to get information out, trying to get information back from you, and also engaging with community science. I want to flag that today, as we talk about our program, we're going to be talking about the pollutants that we monitor and know about, but not everything. And that we're going to be sharing what we know, and we don't pretend that we are the best or only expert on any one of these things, but we think that we have enough experience, enough perspective, enough data, enough knowledge that it's something that we should be sharing with all of you. And we're grateful to Coastside Land Trust for inviting us to do that. So thank you. And I think, Clifton, I'll go ahead and pass it off to you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that background, Kellyx, and thank you for the introductions, Kate. Yeah, it's great to be here. We are going to kick off this presentation with a little bit of engagement with all of you. This might be something that you've interacted with before. It might not be. It's called a Mentimeter. And so folks that are watching, you can scan this code with your phone, and it should take you to a website on your phone. And we're going to ask just a couple questions here just to get to know you all a little bit. We've done our introductions. And so, yeah, we're asking folks, where are you all calling in from? Sometimes these run smoothly, sometimes they are challenging. So we invite you to give it a shot. If you're on a computer screen and you don't have a smartphone, you can also go to menti.com and enter this code here at the top. But it looks like we are getting some responses. Oh, wow, Charlottesville. That's awesome. Scotts Valley. Lived in Scotts Valley for a little while. Loved it up there. more Half Moon Bay, more Montera. Awesome. Well, this is really great. Welcome, everyone. And so the way this works, the Mentimeter is you can just leave this tab open on your phone. And as I go through the other questions, we're going to just have one more now and then one kind of towards the end. If you leave the tab open on your phone, it'll automatically go to the page that we're on. Oh, cool. San Jose. Great. Well, this is awesome. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to go over to the next slide. Again, it should automatically just refresh to the next question for you. And you don't have to answer this one if you're not comfortable, but we love to get a sense for what age group everybody falls into. So we have some different categories here. And again, if you're uncomfortable, you don't have to answer this one. But. Awesome. Looks like back in my days, taking the lead here. Great. Cool. Well, yeah, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. It's glad to have you all here. So I'm jumping right into a slide that has a lot of words that I'm not going to read, but you're welcome to take a photo of this slide, or this presentation is being recorded, so you can come back to this later. But we'd like to give you all a sense of sort of where our understanding is coming from. The sources of information that we're working from. As we present this information to you. So this is a little bit of an outline of some of the projects that we've done over the years. I've been with the RCD just a little under a year now, but this work has been going on for decades, and by a lot of different organizations. So this doesn't presume to be exhaustive, but these are just some of our primary sources of information. Our perspective is informed by a lot of different kinds of monitoring by different organizations. Some focus on specific locations, some monitoring focuses on specific pollutants, and some use different methods. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about all of that today. And as a bit of a sneak preview, we're planning to pull all of these sources together at some point. We really like to do this and develop sort of a state of the coast report that integrates all of the different types of data that we have into one sort of big report. So stay tuned for that. And so, where do we test? This map on the right here is something I pulled together that shows all of the different sites that I could find in a short period of time. There might even be more that we've sampled water quality. So this is Pacifica to Half Moon Bay, and then Pescadero over here on the bottom. And on the left, we have a list of places that we've sampled as well. And I'm sure all of you are somewhat familiar with some of these locations, or maybe some of these ring a bell, or maybe it's in your backyard. So in the following slides, we're going to be talking about some of the pollutants that we test for along the coast. We'll share a little bit of data for each, and then talk about some of the nuances about each type of pollutant. But generally speaking, when it comes to water quality work that we do, we are interested and centered around either human health and or ecological health. So the RCD has for decades, through the water quality program, been working in partnership to understand water quality issues, contaminants, concentrations, and of course, we're out here looking for solutions as well. So generally with any sort of monitoring, it will be it depends on the pollutant, but the focus might be on human health, the focus might be on ecological health, or it could be both. And so the first pollutant that I'm going to be talking about today is fecal indicator bacteria. This one gets a lot of attention on our coast, but also statewide and nationwide. This is the pollutant. Fecal indicator bacteria is the pollutant that closes beaches on our coast. Some other coasts, might have different water quality issues. This is the thing that might lead to closures of beaches in our community. The species of bacteria that we test for are E. coli and Enterococcus. The EPA recommends testing for E. coli in freshwater and Enterococcus in saltwater because E. coli can kind of die once it hits the saltwater. But where do these come from? These come from warm-blooded animals, the gut of warm-blooded animals. And they may be associated with pathogens that are a potential concern for human health. So it's a little bit tricky here because E. coli and Enterococcus are two types of bacteria that they do come from the gut biome of warm-blooded animals. So that's, humans, pets, wildlife as well. But it's not those specific bacteria that make us sick. So that's why we have no direct effects of E. coli and Enterococcus here. But what they do is they indicate the potential presence of pathogens that could make you sick. Because if these bacteria are in poop, then we can assume that, or we can infer that the concentration of, something that we can measure is proportional to maybe potentially proportional to the relative concentrations of other things that that might make us sick, like we're talking salmonella, norovirus, things like that. But we don't test for those directly. And so here I'd like to just talk a little bit about I'm no epidemiologist, I'm a marine biologist, but generally speaking, the pathogens that would be associated with poop that are coming from humans are much more likely to make you sick than pathogens that are coming from poop from cattle or other types of wildlife. Excuse me. So that's this figure here. We have human E. coli on the left and both of these figures showing a higher probability of causing gastrointestinal illness than cattle or domestic animals or wildlife. And I got a frog, excuse me. This scientist that did this study also did a much more recent study, I think it was 2023, that looked specifically at things like I mentioned, like norovirus, salmonella, adenovirus, other human-associated pathogens, and still found that the viruses that are coming from human-related fecal inputs are the most likely ones to make humans sick. One more thing I'd like to flag actually on this slide. So these two images here on the left are for E. coli, and the one on the right is for Enterococcus. And we've circled this these high results. Again, this is probability of illness. These are for human inputs, but here we also do have a high probability related to cattle. So this is a different type of bacteria. And so this is just kind of highlighting some of the nuance of this, whereas, for the E. coli, cattle was much lower than human, this can happen too. So it's always a little bit nuanced, but we just wanted to share that with you all. And so now I'm going to get into a little bit of our data, RCD data. Associated with our First Flush program. This program is a volunteer water quality monitoring program. It happens once every year. We get a team of volunteers out to sample water quality on the first big rain of the year. And so this is the day when pollutants that have accumulated on the land, when over the summer, when it hasn't been raining, things kind of build up. And then during this first big rain, everything gets flushed down into the ocean. And so we expect this day to be kind of representative of probably the worst day for water quality in the year, because all of this stuff is getting washed out. And I know this figure is kind of hard to see, so I want to orient all of you. We don't need to know the site names here. We have E. coli on the left, and we have Enterococcus on the right. And both of these figures are showing from 2015 to 2024. And I think the first thing that we can all see is these figures are all over the place. So E. coli and Enterococcus, fecal indicator bacteria, definitely go all over the place. And as we expect, during this first flush event, they tend to be pretty high. So if you look here, this red dotted line, this is sort of our threshold value. We consider this is where we want things below. And so, we've had a couple times where bacteria concentrations were low and below our desired threshold value. But for the most part, especially during first flush, we'll have high values. And that's not unique to San Mateo County. This is an issue statewide, nationwide. Many, many communities that are adjacent and heavily connected to water systems deal with this issue. I think I also want to maybe highlight that these numbers tend to be a lot higher when it's raining. When we have water traveling across the landscape, it can pick up all of these pollutants and then deposit them into streams, creeks, and eventually the ocean. So we do tend to see much higher numbers when things are wet. A little bit of our tools in action. This is just one example of a creek that we've monitored that shows that as you go from going downstream from top to bottom, so this one here down to the bottom, concentrations of E. coli, this is E. coli, can go up or down. And so, this warm colors indicate concentrations of E. coli going up, and then the greens indicate it going down, which we just wanted to kind of clarify that this is another one of the nuances. Some people might think it's strictly additive. The further downstream you get, you have more and more pollutants. But nature provides filters in some places, and it also provides inputs of new bacteria. So these types of systems are very dynamic, and we do our best to evaluate them in a way that's reflective of that and that incorporates that dynamic nature. So what's the source? Where's it coming from, right? Whose fault is it? That's what we want to know. And the RCD and others who are monitoring water quality have several tools to try and answer this question. So we have microbial source tracking, which is a genetic test that tells us if DNA from a specific species is present in our water sample. So in our current projects, we look at DNA for humans, horses, dogs, and seagulls. And analyzing these genetic data is pretty nuanced. It's sort of more like a clue than, any sort of straight answer. I kind of like to think about our genetic testing, microbial source tracking as a jar of gumballs. So our when we measure E. coli, and I'm talking about like a concentration of bacteria, that's a test that tells us, okay, if you have this jar, there are 200 gumballs in that jar. What MST tells us is, I'm asking, by testing for human DNA, I'm asking, are there red gumballs in this jar? And then I get an answer of yes, or maybe I don't get it, I get an answer of no. Are there blue gumballs in this jar? Yes or no? And so what it doesn't tell us, though, is how many red gumballs there are in the jar or how many blue ones. And so when we're looking at the two types of information, there's a little bit of a disconnect, because we know how many gumballs are in the jar. We know there's red, maybe green, maybe yellow, but we don't know. There could also be purple. And if we didn't test for purple gumballs, then it doesn't show up. So it's a little bit of an investigation, and I think that's just important to highlight. So we use the tests, we use the information that we get from these lab tests in conjunction with other sort of real world boots on the ground approaches to finding solutions. So, you know, if we get something that indicates, oh, we should investigate further here, we'll do a visual inspection. If we see something that looks like that it could be a potential source, we might go test near that spot to see if it actually is a big source of bacteria to the creek. And so we use these tools in various ways to answer these questions the best way we can. And the bottom line here of all of this work that we've done in various streams and creeks on our coast is that there really is no single smoking gun for bacteria in our waterways. We've found that there are multiple species contributing bacteria. We found that the data are complex and nuanced. And the inputs of bacteria can be really location specific and seasonal or even episodic. You know, sometimes there's just one big event where some bacteria or, you know, fecal matter is input into the system. And it might not ever happen again, but we might pick that up and it might drive our investigations. So it's very complex, but you know, I think we're learning a lot as we go, and we're always building a stronger repertoire of tools. And then we have here secondary sources may also play a role. And I think that's really important to note. So what is a secondary source? It's essentially E. coli or Enterococcus growing outside of the gut of a warm-blooded animal. And so sometimes what might happen is if there's an input of fecal material, all of the sort of pathogens and the viruses will wash away because they don't have a host or a human to infect. But those bacteria can continue living in the sediments and the algae. And so sometimes we can see really, really big high spikes of fecal indicator bacteria, but there's no actual fecal matter to indicate because those bacteria are just growing on their own in the environment. So we call those secondary sources. And that's just another thing that kind of complicates our investigations. So I had mentioned microbial source tracking. I just wanted to show you one of our tools in action here. The gray squares you could ignore, but the green and red squares are data. And this figure has our dry season data on the left-hand side going from 2017 to 2024. And then the same on the right-hand side, 2017 to 2024 during the wet season. And I think the big take home here is that, you know, we're seeing a lot more detections of human genetic material during the wet season. So again, this just sort of reinforces that we definitely see a lot more of this happening when it's raining outside and things are being transported. And so what's being done? As I mentioned, I've been with the RCD for about a year. I think I would like to maybe kick this over to Kellyx to speak to this slide.
Sure. And we can also speak about this in more detail during the Q&A if anybody has questions about specific things, but just in general,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different kinds of things that are being done, and this list is only the things with which we're involved. I know other people are involved in other things also, and we've partnered with the county and the harbor district and equestrian and horse boarding operations and farms and ranches and residents and that sort of thing. There's some projects to prevent failing infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, scoping like this photo here, storm drains to make sure there aren't leaks or cross-contamination with like groundwater, cleaning and repairing storm drains, doing manure management of chicken coops or you know, horses or what have you, drainage improvements, rain gardens, sustainable landscaping, a lot of pet waste stations where people have put up the posts with the dog waste bags, improved pump outs for boats in the harbor. There's also new regulations from the Water Board, the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board, that has jurisdiction over most of coastal San Mateo County. And so that's in the San Pedro Creek watershed in Pacifica, the San Vicente Creek watershed that drains to the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, Pillar Point Harbor, Frenchman's Creek, San Gregorio Creek and Pescadero watersheds. So those are just a handful of things. And if anybody has questions about that, you can put that in the Q&A, or we'll talk about it when Clifton finishes his presentation.
Great, thank you, Kellyx. And so that just about closes up our section on fecal indicator bacteria, but I just want to do a little bit of review. So what are the big take homes? We do have chronically high levels of fecal indicator bacteria on our coast. That's not unique to our community. The concern is human sickness. That's the primary concern of bacteria in water, is humans. These bacteria do not make people sick. So the E. coli and Enterococcus that we test for aren't the things that make you sick from water contact. It's the other things that are associated with the poop that these bacteria are indicating the presence of. Amount of bacteria does not predict the amount of risk. And so this one's it's going back to those figures that I showed you with sharing, comparing human inputs, risk associated with human inputs to cattle, things like that. And then also the thing I mentioned about secondary sources of bacteria play into this. So, you might have a really high spike of E. coli if you have a secondary bacterial source, but that doesn't translate directly one-to-one with risk of getting sick, because in that case, the pathogens aren't present anymore. Risk of illness to humans is highest from human waste. Seasonality plays a big role in the amount of bacteria that we see, which you saw with the MST red and green. And lastly, diverse sources and diverse solutions. Ultimately, we need to be very site-specific about how we solve these problems. We need to be open-minded and investigative, and let science lead our decisions as we learn more and move forward. So the next group of pollutants that we're going to talk about today is nutrients. And I think I want to clarify, like, when we talk about nutrients as a pollutant, we're talking about excess nutrients. So that would be any nutrients that doesn't get taken up by the plants that you're growing. The concern for excess nutrients in the environment is ecosystem health primarily. Nutrients can enter the environment from fertilizers, pesticides, detergents, things like that. And the ecological concern related to nutrients is, we don't like to see algae blooms that otherwise wouldn't be happening. Too much algae growing too quickly can result in oxygen being depleted in the water as those algae break down and decompose. And so this is actually a picture of a fish kill that I have here, because when that oxygen drops down to a low level, the fish aren't able to breathe anymore. So nutrients can be a concern for sure. Here's some of our first flush data. Again, just orient you to this. This is our objective number. So this is our threshold that we want our values to be below to have healthy ecosystems. And you'll note we have nitrate on the left and orthophosphate on the right. They have different threshold values that we are trying to achieve. But First Flush and our other monitoring programs haven't really found nitrate to be an issue of concern in coastal San Mateo County. But we do regularly see orthophosphate exceeding this desired threshold amount. So typically one might associate nitrate more with like agricultural fertilizers and pesticides, whereas orthophosphates are typically more associated with household detergents and human waste and things like that, because a lot of household waste streams are higher in phosphorus. So, seeing that we tend to have higher levels of orthophosphate than we want, and our nitrate kind of seems pretty good, it does kind of make us think that maybe we do have some issues potentially with domestic waste connections to our stormwater systems or creeks or something like that. So when we see spikes in orthophosphate and we have low nitrates, we're typically kind of wondering, okay, should we be looking at things like sewer laterals, septic systems, things like that. Another note about our nutrient data, both nitrate and orthophosphate in our county are regularly lower than we see them in other counties. So both of these, and that's a big benefit of the First Flush program, is that it occurs, or it has sort of sister programs in other counties, and we can actually make comparisons of our county to other counties. So in review, nutrients, orthophosphate is regularly above our recommended levels. It may be associated with domestic inputs. We do rarely, but it does happen, have high levels of nitrate occur. We tend to call that more of like an episodic occurrence. We haven't seen any chronic issues with nitrate in our communities. And then the concern here is ecological, as I mentioned, more so than a human health concern. So our next group of pollutants are metals. We, in our programs, test for copper, zinc, and lead. Sources of these can be from gutters, roofs, brake pads, industrial waste, treated lumber, fires, things like that. And then the concern related to metals is for human health and ecological health. So a lot of these metals are required actually in trace amounts. Like, for example, zinc is a perfectly healthy supplement to take to boost your immune system. And zinc is in, zinc oxide sunblocks and a lot of other things, but at really high concentrations, it can cause to health issues for things like marine mammals. It can happen for humans, but it's very high levels. And then, we know lead is a metal of concern, so we don't necessarily need, that's not new news. I just want to share a little bit of our First Flush data with metals. Here we have on the left center is our zinc concentrations. These are averages across all of our sites from 2009 to 2024. We did have in 2016, our average zinc concentration was higher than our desired, recommended level for health. But, for the most part, everything is pretty low. Lead, same thing. This red line is our recommended threshold for human health. And the closest our average got was last year. And we did actually have a few sites last year that exceeded this objective or exceeded this not regulatory limit, but this limit last year in 2023. But then in 2024, a few of those, like all three of those sites that exceeded thresholds for lead were back down within desired ranges. So that can happen. Again, that might be an episodic thing. Those were three sites that were draining into the outer harbor on the sort of western side of Princeton by the Sea. And so, that informs us of where we should be looking more closely, trying to figure out what's going on there. Copper, same thing. We had, these are average numbers across all sites. In the early years of the First Flush program, we had high concentrations of copper, but last few years, things have been a lot lower. So in review, what are the big take homes with our metals data? Most metals are essential in small amounts, like I mentioned, but they can cause impacts at high concentrations. Metals are primarily concerned for ecological health, but they can also affect humans, like with lead. They're not a chronic issue, but we do see episodic occurrences on our coast. And all of these metals can occur naturally, but they're likely, when we see them in the water, they're likely connected to human activities. All right, and this is our last pollutant group that we're going to be talking about, total suspended solids. Essentially, this is just a measure of how much sediment is in the water. Sources of sediment in the water can come from construction, erosion caused by people or natural, agricultural runoff, and fires. Fires can be a big one, resulting in really high levels of suspended solids. The effects, it can affect the visibility in the water, which, if you're a fish and you're trying to eat, it might be kind of harder to find your food. But it also can be harder to breathe when you have gills, or if you're a filter feeder like a clam. It can make it a lot harder to breathe if there's a lot of gunk in the water that's gumming up your system. And so that's sort of the physical impacts of total suspended solids. But sediment also sort of has a chemical charge to it. And so when you have a lot of sediment in the water, those sediments, the charge of that sediment is actually able to bind to and pick up other pollutants that would otherwise not necessarily be mobilized. And we do see that in some of our results. So here again is our first flush data. I've done the last few slides where I've shown first flush data. It's been averages across all sites. This is all of our sites for 2023 on the left, and all of our sites for 2024 on the right for total suspended solids. And you can see for the most part, all of our sites are within our recommended limits, or below the recommended threshold for this. So this is a good thing. And also I want you to note the difference in scale. So both of these red lines are at the same point, 500, but this one's a lot higher because these in 2024 were even lower. But in 2023, we did have at this one site a really big spike, episodic spike of total suspended solids, which we were glad to see, wasn't a chronic issue because it went away in our 2024 data. But going back to what I was saying about the charge and it binding with other pollutants, these are our zinc concentrations over time, 2015 to 2024. And you see in 2023, the same year that we had that spike in total suspended solids at Montera Creek is the same year that we had this spike in zinc. It also happened for copper and some of the other nutrients and metals. So, glad to see it go back down, but this is just demonstrating that those things can often be correlated and potentially related to each other. So, quick summary of our total suspended solids points. They're a concern for ecological health. Sediments can transport other pollutants, and we can all do our part to limit erosion. I just want to flag, it's good to do everything we can to limit erosion, but it's important to do it in a way that doesn't worsen erosion for somebody else, one of your neighbors or somebody else downstream. So if you have any questions about that, if you have an erosion issue on your property, feel free to reach out to the RCD and we'd be happy to help you weigh options. And so you guys all know this, but San Mateo County, on this coast, we really have an intimate knowledge of the land and sea connection. We all have some sense that what we're doing on the land has a direct connection to what happens downstream and in the ocean. And so, we're in a watershed. I just got a couple pictures here, but the take-home message that we want to send you with is that what we do on land has water quality impacts downstream. And, it's all of our responsibilities to play our role in that. And so what can you do? Keep waste away from water. So like some of the things Kellyx had mentioned earlier, maintain sewer laterals, manage manure, cover your chicken coops, pick up after your pets, manage erosion like we mentioned. And then, always follow labels for outdoor chemicals or, appropriate methods, whether you're scraping a boat or, spraying Roundup in your garden, just always follow those appropriate procedures. And here is, and of course, this last one, slow it, sink it, spread it. We like to say that that's sort of our mantra for having good water quality here on the coast. We want to slow stormwater down, we want to try and sink it into the ground, and we want to spread it out. And so here's some different options of how you can do that. This is a permeable driveway, rainwater catchment, vegetated drainage ditches, that helps really sink it in. And then things like rain gardens, and that's also a sinking thing. All right. And so that ends my part of the presentation. We want to do a little pop quiz.
Yeah,
So
I'm
if,
here.
yeah, Kellyx, take
I'm
it
here
away.
for it. So we have a couple of questions for you. Make sure that you're on Mentee. First, fecal indicator bacteria. Are those the bacteria? Are those bacteria what make people sick? Go ahead and put it in. Let's see what you guys come up with. And after we have our little pop quiz, we're gonna answer any questions that you might have. Are FIB, fecal indicator bacteria, what might make people sick? Okay, they're picking up what you're putting down, Clifton. In fact, these bacteria that are monitored on the coast are not what make people sick. There isn't a one-to-one. If you see a large amount of bacteria, that means a more potential risk that there might be a pathogen associated with it that could make you sick. But also, as Clifton mentioned, sometimes there's secondary growth, right? So it could be that like there was bacteria fresh from waste, but that long after the pathogen, any potential pathogen may have died, the bacteria are still growing on like algae or sediment as well. That's the secondary source. Okay, let's go to the next one. Bacteria are persisting because nobody's doing anything about it. Myth or maybe? Yeah, again, you guys are picking up what he's putting down there. That's right. So people are doing things about it. Is it enough? I can't answer that. If we did everything we could, would that be enough? I can't answer that. I can say we all should, do this, but especially with wildlife also in these watersheds, it's not clear to us that if everybody did everything they could, that all of the bacteria would be gone. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do our parts. I think there's often a narrative on the coast. I hear people saying our beaches have all this bacteria and nobody's doing anything about it. There's more to be done, but definitely people are doing some things about it. What's the next one? Who's the culprit? Whose fault is it? Is it the dogs? Is it the horses? Is it the humans? Something else? Definitely, you guys are nailing it. No smoking gun here. It's very complex. There's a lot of inputs. I have seen things show up in local media. When we find something associated with dogs, I'll see things in local media that say, it's the dogs. And it's like, well, we did find evidence of waste from a dog at this point at this location, or it's the horses. And it's really, unfortunately, not that simple. So it means that there's a lot of different solutions that are required. What's the next one? Yeah, who's responsible for clean water? Is it the county? Is it the RCD? Is it the Harbor District? Is it the city of Half Moon Bay? Is it, farms? Is it community members? Who should be doing it? Yep, you guys nailed it again. It's really all of us. It does require government. It does require businesses. It does require residents. It does require policymakers. It really does require all of us to do our parts. So if government agencies are doing all sorts of things to manage water quality, or if the sanitary districts are doing their part, if people aren't managing pet waste in their backyards, or chicken coops, or if you're not taking care of your leaking sewer laterals, then it's all of us. And what's the next one? Yes, this is our last one. We're going to go to Q&A and see if you guys have any questions, but we're curious, we'd be interested in hearing from you. One word from this presentation, one takeaway for you, any reflection you have, any thoughts, we just kind of want to get your gut. What's a word that comes to mind? What's something you learned, or something that you're reflecting on, or what have you? And then I think, Clifton, you might be able to remove the box on that.
Yep, it's off.
Okay. Yuck, right? Yeah, it's complicated. I think that is another one. Sink it, spread it. Yeah. Any other reflections from today? Okay. Oh, here we go. Testing. There's a lot of testing going on. FIB, maybe a new term or just something you're thinking about. Slow it, sink it. Yeah, moderation. Yeah, fair points. Thank you. Oh, thank you. So why don't we go ahead and see if there are any questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me give it back to you, Clifton, before we go to questions.
Yeah, I guess this should have gone before the poll, but I just want to give a little shameless plug for our volunteer opportunities with the water quality program at the RCD. So we have 2 upcoming opportunities. One of them is First Flush, as I mentioned. There's a bunch of people here having a great time going out. You know, sometimes it happens in the middle of the night, sometimes it happens at a really convenient time, but it's a lot of fun. And yeah, we encourage anybody who's interested in volunteering with that to sign up through this link. And then Snapshot Day is sort of our summer equivalent. So we know what day it's happening on because we're not waiting for rain. It's going to be on July 12th. So if you're interested in that, there's a code there as well. And we'll follow up and send links as well after this. So, you know, if you're not able to get to this code now, you can sign up once we send out those links.
Fabulous, thanks. And Clifton, there is a question. I'll just ask you to answer it live. Do you have any
Yeah.
theory on why copper levels seem to show a long-term improvement? Maybe you could go
I
back to
don't off
the
the
copper
Oh yeah, I
slide.
could go back to that slide. I don't off the top of my head, but I do know that especially some of these like legacy contaminants, have been regulated for a while now. I worked on a study unrelated to the RCD, but in a previous job, I worked on a study looking at selenium in the San Francisco Bay, and it's been going down for a long time as well. But some of these heavy metals can persist over time. It might be used in some outdoor chemicals that it's no longer being used in, but I don't have any strong theories as to why we might be seeing that
Do you mind going back
decline
to
over
that
time.
slide?
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so it does look like it's a decreasing trend. It's definitely something we could look into going forward. These are, again, are sort of averages of all of our sites. So I'd be interested to see, you know, with a little bit more granularity, maybe we're seeing one site with a very clear downward trend that might be driving these averages.
I think that what we can do also is we can share with folks who participate in this webinar or who registered for it, the actual First Flush presentation, which is a separate presentation, because to Clifton's point, these are averages. And I think that that averages can be deceiving. Are they going down in general over time, or was there one site that one or two sites where we saw it spiking a few times and then it didn't? So we can send that out to people.
Yeah, and the First Flush report as well. If anybody wants to read the full report, it's available.
Yeah, we're happy to make that available afterwards. Are there any other questions?
You know, there are just as we move forward, and I know we have about 5 more minutes, but you had a slide that was just sharing, you know, about the work that you're doing. Are there any highlight, you know, projects that you'd like to share that you've been working on through the RCD that you've, you know, have been having the
Sure.
most impact, or,
Yeah.
or I would also, I think a lot of people would be curious about projects moving forward, what you're really looking at, you know.
Yeah, a couple of the things that are moving forward right now are, do you mind, Clifton, going to that slide about the projects or what's being done?
Oh yeah, that's
Thanks.
this one.
Yeah, thanks. A couple of things that are moving forward. We're partnering with Montero Water and Sanitary District on moving some of their infrastructure away from an eroding cliff, an eroding bluff, to make sure that it doesn't get compromised and leak sewage into the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve or the ocean, and just protect it from, you know, climate change, basically. There's a lot that we do with equestrian operations on manure management, helping to compost horse waste, and then it can also be used as a soil amendment that draws down carbon, you know, draws down carbon dioxide equivalent and greenhouse gases in healthy soils. We're really we've applied for some funding to advance some solutions in in some areas of the Pacifica watershed, the San Pedro Creek watershed, to where there is like a canal basically that's all concrete, to try to remove the concrete and have it be a vegetated filter, a natural filter for water before it gets to the creek and before it then gets to the beach. We've done things with the county and the harbor district to clean out the fats, oils, grease, sediment, things that are building up in the storm drains that drain into the beaches at Pillar Point Harbor. We did projects with maybe, was it like, I think maybe 9 or 10 property owners in the like Montero Moss Beach area a few years back to help them put in sustainable landscaping with grant funding so that they were part of the solution to protect water quality at the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve that's downstream. And yeah, we worked a lot with the Harbor District on their policies and monitoring and thinking about how they work with the live aboard boats, that sort of thing. So those are some of the things that we've been working on.
Great. Anything for folks that are in, want to get a good idea of different sustainable landscaping? You had a photograph in there of one of the projects. Anything that you would send people and thinking of outside of the Half Moon Bay Library, or are there any places, whether it's your project or another project, that would be good for people to look at as examples of sustainable landscaping?
Yeah, I did put something in the chat saying, if you have a question, contact us, go ahead and ping us. We also have on our website, we can send this also as a follow-up information, a booklet called Slow It, Spread It, Sink It, that provides people with some technical assistance. We also have a booklet that's technical assistance for people managing rural roads, dirt roads, and things that can, bleed sediment into these waterways, which is a particular issue in some watersheds more than others. So we have a few resources like that. Otherwise, a lot of what we do is come out and provide site-specific technical assistance, or people can just follow up with us and we'll give them one-to-one help.
That's great. Awesome. Is there anything else you would like to share as you have this opportunity with some folks that are?
Yeah, I'd say that there's some presentations that are coming up soon that are really specific about this last year's first flush data, the last 2 years. So like what's happening right now in very specific places, if people want to learn about that. And otherwise, they can just follow up with us individually if they'd like, and feel free to give us a call anytime.
Awesome. And Clifton, you were mentioning with the first flash, when we were talking beforehand about it, you've got to be kind of ready to go, but and people can get a little bit more information, but open to anyone who's interested, right? For anyone to kind of click into this and be involved. And even if you are the lay person who has had none of this experience, except you've watched this video, come here for this webinar. Anyone can.
Yeah, we provide all the training, all the equipment, everything you need to make this happen. And we encourage everybody who's even remotely interested to sign up for First Flush. Because oftentimes what happens is, we're tracking storms, and as the big first storm of the year is coming up, we're communicating out to everybody. And, sometimes people that are normally really available and they have all kinds of schedule availability, sometimes they're the ones that have a conflict at the last minute. And, sometimes it's somebody that's normally very busy that's like, oh, wow, it's happening right now. I'm actually available. So yeah, we encourage everyone to sign up. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes you get soaked with rainwater in the middle of the night, but it's always a good time. And it's for a really important project that's telling us a lot about water quality on our coast. So yeah, thank you for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kellyx and Clifton, for what a fantastic presentation. Thank you, Clifton, for this is a wealth of knowledge here, and I think hopefully really accessible for a lot of us who are just kind of learning this bit by bit about our water here. So thank you
For having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's been great.
And for those of you who are here, thank you so much for those of you who have made it here for the webinar. And we also will be sending a follow-up email with a recording for this webinar in the next couple of days. So please share this. If there's anyone you can think of that you think would really appreciate this, just an orientation to the water and our local watershed, this would be a great opportunity to just share this. And that will be coming out in the next couple of days. And also questions, if you have any follow-up questions, if you'll send those. I know that Kellyx sent you a direct chat if you have any follow-up questions, to reach out to those guys afterwards. We'll give you some links directly to the San Mateo Resource Conservation District too, so you can learn how to support at a more specific individual level, also for the Coastside Land Trust, and those will all come out in the follow up as well. So expect that tomorrow or Monday. We've got a lot of good things coming up. We are going to be having another webinar. Will come in June, in mid-June. Sarah Polger, project manager for the the Wavecrest Coastal Trail, will be doing a presentation on what that looks like. Both from a logistical standpoint, to an environmental standpoint, to a community standpoint, all those pieces. So join us, please. We'll also include that in the follow-up, so you can link on to that easily. And a number of other things coming up. So please keep your ear to the ground on all of the good work that's being done with the San Mateo Resource Conservation District and with Coastside Land Trust. Thank you so much for spending whether you're here with us on Saturday or whether you're here with us listening to us at another time. Thank you for making time to listen and be a conscientious member of our community and our environment. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing many of you again soon. Thank you.